The graphics are actually nice.
Hi guys, this is Amir, your host for the day, and I would like to welcome you for this panel discussion for today to discuss the impact, analysis, and opportunities for the cannabis industry during the COVID-19 crisis. Today's event is brought to you by Designhill, world's leading creative marketplace that caters to the creative needs of businesses and individuals alike, who can source high-quality designs for professional designers and buy unique products created by independent artists. I would like to thank our three guests for today who have taken the time out their schedule to be present here and help many entrepreneurs presently facing the impact and effects of COVID-19 on the cannabis industry. So moving ahead, let me introduce you our panelists for today. We have with us Javier Hasse, who's Managing Director, Benzin. So Javier is a cannabis, hemp, CBD, and psychedelic focused reporter, currently serving as a Managing Director for Benzinga Cannabis and founder of Spanish language news site El Plantio. As an award-winning reporter and editor, Javier has roughly 5,000 unique articles published across numerous mass media outlets, including CNN, Forbes, MSN, Chicago Tribune, CNBC, The Street, and many others. Also with us is Krista Whitley, founder CBD Caring. Krista founded CBD Caring on her couch and has grown it to an award-winning and fast-growing plant medicine empire with a 100% female board of directors and leadership team. She's named as one of the top 100 cannabis leaders in the medical category for her extracting standards with a commitment to improving the quality of life for people and pets by Green Entrepreneur. Also with us is our third panelist, Max Simon, CEO Green Flower. With a vision of building an education company that would change the world's perception of cannabis, Max co-founded Green Flower in 2014. His mission is to educate the world about cannabis. Max also built and ran world-renowned self-help guru Deepak Chopra's product business. There he rebranded the company, developed and launched 49 signature products, created these digital marketing strategies, and impacted hundreds and millions of people online and offline. So thank you so much, guys, for taking out your time today and joining us for this panel discussion. So Krista, please go ahead and say hello to your audience.
Hey, everybody. I think every cannabis business should start on somebody's couch. So I'm glad that you're all here and joining us today, hopefully from your couch.
Max.
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. It's nice to be with you today, and hopefully we can share some insights that'll be helpful. We have, three really smart people that understand the cannabis landscape, and we're looking forward to serving you any way we can.
Okay, so Javier, please go ahead.
There was a charm. There you go. Hi, everyone. I agree with Crystal. Every cannabis business should start from someone's couch. To be fair, at least every cannabis business idea has started from someone's couch. Otherwise, where are you consuming your cannabis?
That's true. So thank you so much, guys, for talking to us today and taking out your time for this panel discussion. So before we start, let's look at what Designhill is all about.
Need to get your parents off your back? Head to the world's #1 creative marketplace, Designhill.
When I started my photography business, I needed something that said, this was more than just a hobby. It's not a hobby, Mom. That's why I went to Designhill and got an amazing logo super fast at a price I could afford. The process was easy using Designhill's logo maker. Just enter the name of your business, then pick out a number of designs that inspire you. I'll pick this one and that one looks cute. Then pick your colors or let the system decide. Add some more info like a slogan, the industry your business is in, and your budget. The logo maker, using machine learning and artificial intelligence, will design thousands of logo variants that you can choose from and adapt. In fact, I was able to get everything from business cards to t-shirt design and complete social media kit, all with the click of a button. With that, I'm all set. Now everyone I meet knows I'm a legit photographer. Even my mom. It's real. That's decaf.
Let the world know it's real and build your brand with Designhill.
Guys, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So ready to fire up?
Perfect. We're back, right?
Yes. Okay. So let's start. So let me start this with you, Krista. Let's get the basic clear first. So how do you see COVID impacting the cannabis industry by large?
Well, I think, the immediate impact is that I think cannabis businesses at every level, whether it's cultivation or dispensary, brand, extraction, I think all of them had to immediately go into a crisis mode that I don't think any of us had ever prepared ourselves for. We prepared ourselves for a variety of regulatory concerns, but I don't think anyone thought the world would stop for 6 weeks. And I think the long term, how COVID has impacted us is much like 9/11. Before 9/11, when we would travel, we were not used to taking our shoes and clothes and laptops out of our bag. And we've just adjusted. It has permanently changed the way that we travel. I think COVID will permanently change the way that businesses handle hygiene and safety precautions. And so I know I don't think this is going to be something that 90 days from now we all don't have masks and gloves and hand sanitizer and personal protective equipment on hand. I think it's a permanent change. And I think, it speaks to how nimble the cannabis industry is and that you have to be successful, in that so many cannabis businesses have been able to be very fluid and continue serving the cannabis consumers, whether it is adult use or medical use, throughout all of the legal markets in the United States.
Okay. So Javier, what are your opening statements regarding how it's impacting the cannabis industry by large?
I agree with Krista. I think it has forced the entire world to adapt to a new way of being. I do believe the cannabis industry was somewhat better prepared than many others, especially traditional industries who are pretty much comfortable. There's many of the traditional industries are nowadays called defensive, right? So they're rarely adapting and constantly changing, whereas cannabis has always been forced to react quickly and change and adapt to ever evolving regulations and contexts and legal frameworks. So there has been an impact, but I do feel it's been somewhat lower than in many other industries. And in many ways, it has driven demand up, and I'm sure we'll be getting into that in a few minutes. But just as an introduction, for those who are not aware, demand for cannabis in legal markets since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic has skyrocketed. 2x, 3x, 4x. Like, businesses are reporting crazy increases in sales and demand and use and whatever it is, right? And whether it's Krista with physical products or Max, for instance, with a web property, I'm sure we're seeing that kind of spike. I don't know, Max, are you?
Yeah, so I run a company called Green Flower, which is an online education company, and it's been phenomenal what has taken place in terms of consumer interest, government interest, investor interest and employer interest in the cannabis industry. I'm not going to talk to the kind of the societal implications of COVID, because I think that is quite frankly impacting everybody. Yeah. In this cannabis industry, though, we're seeing a whole new wave of adoption. For example, we have been intending to partner with colleges and universities to power their cannabis curriculums. And for years and years and years, it was a very slow, very kind of gated process. Well, in the last 60 days, we've signed 3 university partnerships to power their cannabis curriculums, because schools all of a sudden are saying cannabis was deemed an essential business by our governments. It was seen as a way to help people with anxiety and cope with this place. It's generating a ton of tax revenue and job opportunities. And so all of a sudden, cannabis has been thrust into this extremely positive light that I believe will not just push federal legalization forward here in the United States, but will continue to see a boom in industry from all the aspects of the commercial side as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Mac, you have touched a very rich aspect here. My next question was about it. Do you see it's around time to legalize cannabis across the nation? I mean, federally recognizing it and legalizing it as a way and as a means, to support the cities and the local states in terms of the tax revenues that it can help generate. As we have already seen, a lot of states who have already legalized it, they're doing pretty good in terms of generating the revenues, and also in a way it also helps governments who are already in a way giving handouts to people. So isn't it a balance of the situation happening? Do you see it happening in the future?
I would be absolutely shocked if cannabis doesn't get legalized in this next term. I think that we're in a state of the world now where revenue, the economy, jobs, tax money is not just a nice to have, it's a necessity to get our world back into some kind of form of operating shape. And the cannabis industry employs hundreds of thousands of people already. It generates hundreds of millions in tax revenues for states. It is clearly a product that people demand, and it's something that has been so restricted to this point and still had those benefits. And so I think that regardless of who gets elected, I would be absolutely stunned if we don't see federal legalization come in this next term.
Okay, Krista, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I would agree. And I think one thing that is really unique about the cannabis community, whether it's the community in Humboldt or in downtown Denver, it's that when there's a win, like Max, 3 universities, that is huge. That is huge mainstream adoption. That isn't just a win for Max and for his team. That's a win for the entire industry and every single entrepreneur who's directly related or ancillary. And I think because it has started at such a grassroots level, the community of cannabis, the people behind it do such a good job of celebrating each other's wins and helping each other. I was really encouraged by Alan Kane and his team. They had more people who wanted to donate money to families who were working in the cannabis industry when the COVID quarantine happened than they had families to give it to. That's a wonderful thing, to be part of a community and part of an industry where leaders in every city, from Seattle to Denver to New York, all wanted to give back and make sure that those cannabis employees were able to feed their families. I think that is really exciting and very reflective of the core values that the cannabis community has always represented.
Okay. Javier, I'm sure you cover this industry across the length and breadth of the nation. What do you see it happening in the future? Do you see it being legalized as soon as possible, or it'll still take time in the federal policies and getting it adopted across the nation? What is your take on that?
I mean, from being inside the cannabis industry, inside the cannabis movement, being a part of the community, we always feel like it's completely logical, right? Like, of course we have to legalize. Of course this is the time. But at the same time, we've been saying this for a while. So what I do think that the fact that cannabis was deemed essential, and not only in the U.S. in several states, but across the world and in different countries where cannabis is legal, it's a strange situation. I don't know if it will be legalized soon or not. It always looks like the issue is ripe and the time is right, and then it doesn't quite happen. This time around, there is a lot more talk about it, and a lot more politicians and policymakers are getting behind the cause. We're starting to talk about more complex financial instruments and not just tax revenue, but like cannabis municipal bonds. So I mean, we are starting to acquire real consciousness and dimension the impact that cannabis can have in the economy and especially in tough times like these. But I really don't know. I mean, the world seems to be legalizing, and we've seen many countries legalize cannabis in one form or another in the last 2 years. But when it comes to the United States, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Trump will do it, if whomever comes next will do it, if none of them want to take the risk, So it's a tough call. Things look promising, but they have for a while. And we thought that when we saw the first, tax dollars in Colorado come in, it would be like a domino effect, and it wasn't. And we thought the same thing about Washington and Oregon and California and Massachusetts and Illinois. And the fact remains that, the federal government doesn't want to take the risk associated with such a move when they can just, steer clear of states' decisions and let them decide.
Okay. So Krista, while Javier is a little skeptic about it, and while we are reeling under this current scenario, so let's come back to the topic, and let me ask you this: what are the strategies and growth hacks that you would like to share with entrepreneurs in this industry? I mean, we at Designhill have served more than 220 clients from the cannabis industry as a small business since 2016. And we see a lot of people asking us that how to grow in it, what are the growth hacks, how do we go about it? Because we not just help them with the logos, we help them with creating the brand. So now we have experts here, and I'm sure a lot of these entrepreneurs, this video is going to reach out to them through mails, through our social media channels and YouTube also. So what do you have these strategies for them to grow their business during the COVID?
Sure. So, I would say one of the best opportunities because of our fragmented state system for THC, and because of the fact that CBD has only recently gained kind of mainstream all 50 state legalization and acceptance, that's really where the opportunity lies. That's where you can be a single mom on your couch and have an idea and start in your kitchen. And I think, the first thing that I think a lot of small entrepreneurs or solo entrepreneurs have as an opportunity that a lot of these big monster Canadian publicly tradeds don't is, I didn't have the luxury of not worrying about profit. I couldn't just sell things and acquire things. That wasn't, my reality. I had a light bill and 2 small children I needed to pay for and put food on the table for. So I think the good news is there are more opportunities and resources for entrepreneurs. Designhill's fantastic. I mean, as I was watching, my God, what I would have given in 2014 to have you just plug in a logo and pick colors and design your, website. Are you kidding? I had to watch YouTube tutorials on how to build a WordPress site because I couldn't afford that. All my coding skills came from that. And so I think that's where the opportunity is. If you're someone who's been sitting on the sidelines and you're really, excited about this, I believe, strongly, if you've got a day job and you can have a side hustle, absolutely go all in on that. Or if you're getting unemployment and, you're sitting at home all day, channel that energy into creating something new and innovative, but always keep top of mind profit, right? I knew with my very first cream that I ever created in my kitchen that it took me 282 units to pay my rent, and I think that is the spirit behind our entire business. And I think it's kept us out of, having a hot tub in my lobby, like some of the Silicon Valley companies that I hear about. That leanness, that lean entrepreneur, it made me value Tim Ferriss's words in the books that I bought because I had to be of that lean mindset. And so I think, there's so many opportunities. Tap into everything we have right now. I think if you'd asked us 90 days ago, Max and Javier and I may have been, around the world traveling and busy. It is so easy to connect with great mentors. And tap into them and don't ask them for their encyclopedia of knowledge that they've earned over years, but maybe, hit up Max on LinkedIn and say, hey, what's your one tip for, an aspiring entrepreneur or small business? What's your one hack? And, I find people in our community just have so much heart that they're willing to help someone who authentically is really in it for the right reasons and has a lot of passion.
Okay. So Max, we just discussed that you have made a good progress in the educational institute. So would you like to share your secrets, your strategies, your growth hacks with us?
Yeah, the cannabis industry is remarkably complex. And actually, the first thing I would say is that it's very important to really learn and get educated about all the different sectors, because there are many different facets of the cannabis industry: cultivation, CBD, retail, manufacturing, distribution, and then all the ancillary services. And so, the first thing I message, and it's not just because Green Flower is an education company, but it's because I've genuinely learned to understand the complexity of the cannabis industry, is take the time up front to really learn and understand the space, which of course Green Flower is a good resource. But then beyond that, the most important hack I would say in cannabis is to get so laser narrow with your focus, because part of what happens in cannabis is you see all the opportunity in this whole landscape and all the things that could happen. And it is so easy to want to go after all that stuff. But instead, and as somebody who has done this, I might add, done it incorrectly, you want to really zero in on exactly, who your audience is or who your target customer is, and what's your number one or number two sales channel, and what's the exact laser focused strategy you can design to be so precise. Because what I see in cannabis that causes people to fail and fail and fail is they end up going very wide and having all these different irons in the fire, and none of them really gain a lot of traction. And in cannabis, if you can really narrow down that focus, that's where you'll really get traction. So we really started to narrow in on higher education as an example, as a channel. And it took us 1.5 years to really gain that traction. But if we didn't make that decision to be so precise and so focused with that one channel, we wouldn't be here today sitting with you saying we have all these new university partnerships.
Okay, that sounds great. So Javier, I'm sure you talked with a lot of entrepreneurs from the industry, and this topic might come across, in a lot of conversations that you have. So what do you have to share about your experiences with them, and you also being part of the industry? What are the key marketing strategies that are there in this industry which have really helped brands to progress?
Honestly, what Max was just saying is, two key points. Of course, education is key, but focus has been something that an increasing number of successful entrepreneurs in cannabis have brought up, right? So what happens is you get into the cannabis industry and everything is exciting, everything is cool. You can call it cannabis. It's marijuana, it's weed, it's pot, it's whatever. It's a cool product per se. So a lot of people just, get into the industry from, say, an ancillary side, which could be software or information services or data or even physical security, whatever you want to do. And you get excited with the prospect of growing cannabis or making cannabis products. And the thing is, if you want to grow cannabis or make cannabis products, go do that. But, don't try to be the entire supply chain, because you can't. Maybe you can, maybe a few companies, lucky companies with great teams can do it, but most will not succeed on every subsector of the industry. So, one of the things that I recommend people very often when trying to get into the cannabis industry is think, try and put some thought into what you know how to do already and convert that skill into the cannabis industry, right?
Okay, thanks for that helpful insight. Yeah.
So if you're an accountant, maybe become a cannabis accountant. Don't become a designer. If you're a designer, don't try go, extract oils, because that's probably a chemical engineer's job, right? So that certainly is important. And maybe I lost track of the marketing side of it, but I got just excited with Max's point regarding focus, because I think it's an important one, and a lot of people have been recently losing sight of it and thinking that leveraging your brand to get into as many verticals as possible will help you, and it might help only a few very well-known brands, and the rest will probably fail because they lack the resources, knowledge, time, and focus to succeed in every vertical there is.
Okay. So Max, while at large, all small scale businesses are suffering right now in terms of generating their capital, paying off their rents and maintaining that capital to pay their employees, keep them employed for the good times. So let me ask you this, is there any silver lining for the industry, for the cannabis industry specifically, because of this COVID crisis?
Well, I mean, I think one is just the recognition that we're essential businesses, because one of the hurdles that cannabis faces all the time is stigma. The stigma that prevents us from getting bank accounts, the stigma that prevents us from getting loans, the stigma that prevents us from being recognized as legitimate businesses. And I think that the silver lining in this is being deemed essential, being respected by governments, being kind of celebrated as an industry that can operate, has been quite good at building the legitimacy of this industry. And to Krista's point, I also think that one of the things that's been quite inspiring is the way in which the cannabis community has come together to really try to demonstrate that they're, good for the community, good for people of the places where they operate. And so you see a lot of these businesses that are able to maintain operations succeeding. I know my local dispensary, who I'm friends with, they said that they're up 500% in sales this month, because all of a sudden they have a whole wave of new business of people trying out the products and telling their friends and being respected as a legitimate business. So I think the best thing, which is a long fought battle in the cannabis industry, is the legitimacy that has come to the industry from this. And all of a sudden we went from being kind of a fringe, they often call it a sin industry, which drives me nuts, into something that's an essential medicine and something that's providing a great service to our communities. And I think the cannabis industry has really celebrated that fact and been celebrating all the other people that have been succeeding in the midst of this while the rest of the world is kind of collapsing in on itself.
Can I ask you a question real quick, both of you? I want to know what you think about this, right? Like, so we went from sin to seen, right? Like, people suddenly see the industry as something else. One could make a point that many of the decisions to make cannabis businesses essential was simply, politicians in a time of crisis saying, well, this is legal, we don't have time to figure out what's what right now. But do you think it really changes the future of the industry? Because a lot of people were, for instance, very surprised that cannabis was not included in the US's federal stimulus package. And I was like, I am not surprised. I wish it was. I think it should. But, if the government deems it federally illegal, no essential status will make it, will make that different. I don't know. How do you feel about this? Because we talk about essential, and the whole category of essential changing the future. And I don't know, to which extent do you feel this was just, emergency action versus... So
Krista, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be quick and I'll toss it over to Mac. I would tell you, I'll take every inch we can get. We've fought so long and so hard, and I've spent way too many hours of my life. So I think every inch we can get, and frankly, Max's example of 3 universities, that's certainly the first tangible business win I've heard. I couldn't be happier for him. I hope it leads to 30 universities by the time this is done for their team, because that is a win for all of us. Max, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think we've all spent a lot of time understanding government in the spectrum of the cannabis industry. And one of my conclusions of government is that they operate based on priority, on what they believe priorities are. So if I look at the state of the world right now, and I look at what the priorities of government are going to be, of course, it's public health and safety, but it's going to be such an emphasis on the economy getting back going again. And so I do believe that being deemed an essential business and thus then translating into the economic boom, I feel more optimistic than I've ever been about legalization kicking into gear, because I have not said that for 5 years. I've actually been on the other side of the coin, being on the inside going, no, this is not going to happen. This is not going to take place. But I've completely flipped in the last few months and seeing what's taken place, because it's undeniable the economic benefit that the cannabis industry provides, the job creation it provides. And I think that the priority of government to want to get the economy going again is going to tip this over the line.
Okay, all right. So I hope you guys are enjoying this discussion. So before we move forward, I would like to give a quick shout out to Designhill, world's largest creative marketplace, for organizing this panel discussion. Let's take a quick break of 3 minutes and keep this interesting conversation going. Stay tuned. We'll be back to hear more from Javier, Krista, and Max.
Climax is the full favorite feeling.
So, Krista, we were discussing the silver linings. Do you agree with Max that a lot of brands have been able to turn this adversity into an opportunity?
Absolutely, I would agree with Matt. I think cannabis entrepreneurs for decades have been turning adversity into opportunity. And so certainly, I think we're continuing to do so.
Okay. So, Javier, what will you say? I mean, the years of being pushed by the government, no loans, and just, being on their own, has it really helped the industry to be prepared for situations like these?
Javier, you're muted, buddy.
At the beginning of can you hear me? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we can hear
I was saying at the beginning of the live stream is, the fact that we're so used to reacting fast and adapting and really being nimble has helped a lot. And as Krista says, honestly, this has been like, it's tough to say. It's one of those like Schadenfreude kind of situations where you don't want to be happy you're succeeding or doing better than you were in a situation like this. But the reality is many cannabis businesses have been thriving in this situation. And I think it is a mixture of, our capacity to change and adapt, and also the fact that, it's one of these products that people love and need in times like these. Whether it's a medical use, people cannot stop medicating, whether it's adults or recreational use or whatever you want to call it. People love their weed, and in times like these, I don't know. There's few things that help with anxiety as much as cannabis does, and I can tell you that firsthand.
Okay. So Max, because of the COVID being such large scale and impacting the world that the way it has, a lot of people are asking us the question here. Nancy Drew has asked this, and a lot of people have upvoted this question as well. So what do you see the marketing strategies post the COVID time, specifically for the industry?
I go back to that targeting. I feel like one of the things that the cannabis industry has really struggled with is we've been everything to all people. And it's partially because it's one of those products that does appeal to all people. I've never in my life seen a product that an 18-year-old kid can be just as enthusiastic about as an 80-year-old grandmother, right? It's a very unique kind of offering, but we're also at a point now where in order to be successful, I think the marketing strategies need to be very, very pinpointed on who is really the audience that you're most looking to serve. And it's a challenge. It's not an easy thing to do in cannabis because inherently in your heart, well, this could help everybody or this could benefit everybody. But I think that we're in an environment now where success needs to be inevitable. And the way that we do that in cannabis is by really narrowing down that focus and saying, this is exactly who I'm going after. It's this audience, this product, this message, this packaging, this channel. And when doing that in cannabis, you find real resonance. And so I think there's lots of opportunities because the audience is so wide to go that narrow and focus in this space. And I've seen brands that are doing that achieve tremendous success when they can kind of lock in that market.
Okay. So Krista, Max believes that being focused on your target audience and having that niche of the brand and that positioning strategy is going to work post-COVID period. So what is your take on this?
Gosh, I wish we had more controversy on this panel.
That's why it's called panel discussion. So please have your counter opinions. I'm sure the audience would love to hear them.
I don't think that there is. I think the mistake that I have seen a lot of large brands do who don't understand how to build a brand. It doesn't matter if you're cannabis or you're Coca-Cola, right? Even Pepsi understood, the new generation, right? I think it's really important. What brands do a lot of harm and very rarely are successful with is trying to be all things to all people. And, I think the most successful brands that I've seen that have gained the most cult status and momentum across the board are the ones who really understand. They aren't just going after lady folk. They want lady folk during their cycle every month, or they want women who want to combat aging, or they want women over 60 who are dealing with pain, right? Those are the things that they're looking at targeting. And then they have a lot of clarity and focus around their message. So everything that they communicate is from that perspective. And I think that's, the opportunity, across the board for every brand, no matter where they are in their development, and what kind of opportunities they're looking to take advantage of.
Definitely.
So Javier, do you think brands taking the niche way, or do you think brands are capitalizing on the cannabis being accepted by the audience all across the country?
Go ahead. No, please.
Go ahead. Please.
Really think cannabis is still accepted by everyone across the country? I mean, I've run into some housewives in Oklahoma and some in Kansas City that would sure have an argument about that.
So Javier, before I come to you, I think Max disagrees on it. So Max, what's your point?
Oh no, there's still tremendous lack of acceptance. I think that you do have a growing population of people that believe this is, not harmful, which is a step in the right direction. But you still have quite a bit of people, throughout the world who believe that this is terrible. And they really have a tremendous negative stigma around it. And so we're not there yet, but I can say we started in 2014, producing cannabis education, which felt very early for the space. It is a completely different world that we live in 2020 from when we started then in terms of acceptance. I mean, the fact that we're on your platform, a marketing and design platform talking about cannabis is indicative of the progress that has happened over these years, but we're not done yet. Let's be really clear. There's still a long way to go.
Mm-hmm. So I'm loving this because now we have like counter opinions. So initially you used to agree on the every point. So now this is getting excited. So I'm gonna take a break here and let all of you guys debate on this topic. So Javier, would you like to add on that?
So two things. One relates to Max's point. One relates to Krista's point. From what Max is saying, it's interesting to actually note that stigma remains one of the main drivers stopping cannabis consumption and adoption. Last week I put out this article about a report that came out, and they talked with people, and even though people declared that they believed cannabis was safer than alcohol, stigma remained the main deterrent for their consumption. Even when they personally think that cannabis is fine, the social stigma is still stopping many. Many others are okay with cannabis, but not marijuana, as if they were different, and not quite understanding. We've been very successful in the rebranding. And then to Krista's point, what I think is interesting, and actually back to both Krista and Max's point, what we're seeing when we talk about, focus and specialized products, I think is very telling of the evolution of cannabis as a product itself, right? Until 5 or 10 years ago, cannabis was just cannabis. There wasn't much more to it. Like you could have indicas or sativas or, a couple of different strains. But as the market evolves and the consumer evolves, we're seeing adoption and of many different products, and you need to start targeting different markets, right? So it's no longer, the cannabis consumer is no longer just the person who smokes a joint or a blunt or a spliff or a bowl. It's people using topicals. It's people using capsules. It's people consuming it as a cannabis wine with no alcohol or beverages of whichever type. So, that was an interesting point that I thought was, they go in parallel, right? Or they go hand in hand. The evolution of brands themselves targeting smaller niches goes hand in hand with the evolution of products themselves, right? Because you no longer offer just weed, you offer a wide array of cannabis products. Your consumer has to be a lot more targeted, and you're segmented in terms of audience.
Okay, I get that. Max, with most of the cities in US under lockdown, supply chain is being hit. I'm sure it is being hit. So how are brands coping with it? How are you coping with it?
They're just trying their best to do social distancing, but keep working. I've talked to a few dozen companies right now that are still operating as normal. They're operational because they're an essential business. They're still working. And I've actually, for some unusual reason, heard of an unusually low amount of COVID cases in cannabis companies. I can't think of almost any company that's had more than maybe a single person or something that's caught it from someplace. And so it has been disrupted in that the whole world has been disrupted. And certainly in many cases, like, for example, Las Vegas, they shut down retail stores, but they still allowed for some delivery, which was a huge disruption to the supply chain. And so there are some challenges that have come in place that have required businesses to kind of pivot and adjust. But for the most part, cannabis industry has continued to operate as normal with just the extra challenges that exist between the companies, operating in this kind of current COVID crisis as they stand. So again, it's one of the few spaces where things have been challenging in many ways because, the whole world has been disrupted, but the cannabis industry has faced certainly less disruption than other spaces have that have just been forced to shut out and stop altogether.
Okay. So Javier, do you see hostile takeovers take place after the COVID is over? Because a lot of small businesses in the industry also, they're suffering to sustain. So do you see it taking place after the COVID lockdown is end?
That's a very interesting question. I mean, I definitely see more consolidation and more mergers and acquisitions taking place. This has been a trend for the last 2 or 3 years, with a slight deceleration during these COVID times. But honestly, now that you bring it up, it wouldn't surprise me to see some hostile takeovers. Most cannabis businesses, as we mentioned, have been able to adapt to these circumstances, but some haven't because they're not allowed to, because their businesses are not as easy to change, or they can't just pivot overnight. So we might see a few of the winners of the situation, the ones that emerge unscathed after COVID, going for hostile takeovers of what look like powerful or strong brands or companies. So yeah, it's a very interesting point, and
Okay.
I was not thinking about it until now, but it makes a lot of sense.
Max, would you like to add on that?
Well, hostile takeovers is usually a public company term where there's actually like a stock exchange taking place. And since we have, a really small number of public companies in cannabis, and they're mostly Canadian companies, I think more what you're seeing is distressed assets, where there's lots of companies that are, running out of money. And so now all of a sudden they were raising at a certain valuation or expecting a certain kind of influx of capital that they're not getting right now, because the whole investment banking, investment capital landscape has really come to a hard stop globally. And so I do think you're going to see a tremendous amount of consolidation, because what's going to happen is any of these investors or these companies that do have money to put in are going to just come in to save these groups, right? They're going to be able to take anything that they can get to be able to, stay solvent or stay liquid. And so I think we're going to see a huge wave of consolidation, as well as, unfortunately, I do think we're going to see a big wave of companies going out of business that just didn't have enough cash to make it through this period. And as a result of that, and we're expecting investment or funding coming in and not getting it. And now they're, in a really tough spot. So I think for a lot of the smaller players or the startup players, they're going to have to, really take a hard look in the mirror and figure out what do they do to keep moving forward.
Okay. So Krista, what's your take on this? Do you see brands collaborating with each other, or hostile takeovers taking place, or the industry going strong in terms of startup owners, being on their own during this COVID period?
Well, I mean, gosh, I've been on probably 36 discovery calls with different leadership teams that are actively vetting opportunities. And so I can certainly tell you that there is a voracious appetite for opportunism. And, I am very thankful that the calls that I have been on have been, really great businesses that just probably should have fundraised, probably should have purchased an umbrella before it was raining. Now it's raining. And so they don't necessarily have the infrastructure to scale, or they have, capitalization issues that they had probably in November, December, that have clearly come to a head and have really jeopardized their business. And I think, that's a tough place to be in as an entrepreneur. You always try to prepare for the things that you don't know. But I don't think any of us anticipated it would be at this level. And so I can tell you that there actively are private investors and public companies, smaller public companies, Canadian public companies that are actively looking for opportunities. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing for younger startup entrepreneurs to become part of a larger organization when it's the right fit. When I think that becomes more controversial, and probably a lot more uncomfortable is when it's not the right fit. And so I actually, you know, again, I think, gosh, we're so optimistic on this call, all of us. I think, you know, we've kind of been through the highs and lows, and it's nice to be on a panel with people that, you know, share the sense of optimism that I certainly have for our entire industry and community.
Cannabis help.
Yeah, go on cannabis, really.
So Max, let me ask you this question. A lot of people are asking us this. Post the COVID period, and when the industry gains mass and acceleration, what kind of skill sets do you think are in demand in terms of the human resources within the industry? Can you shed some light on this?
That is such a great question. And also, I just have to say, I have about 5 minutes till I have to go. I have a hard stop today, unfortunately. But it's such a great question, because the biggest obstacle that we see in cannabis right now from our side as a cannabis education company is the incredible demand for specialized talent in cannabis. Yeah. There are these entire sectors that really do require tremendous specialized knowledge to operate. And in those spaces, there is such demand for that talent. So for example, in the extraction world, where there is a real specialized need for cannabis extraction and hemp extraction, there's a huge limitation of skilled, talented workers. You can do that in cultivation, in the propagation side. You can see that in the processing, in the manufacturing side. And even, of course, like one of the most in-demand jobs right now is a knowledgeable and trained cannabis salesperson. Somebody who actually understands cannabis and understands the landscape of how to operate. And so it goes back to something Javier said earlier, which is the best thing you could do is take your existing background, what you do, what you love, what you know, learn the cannabis industry, which, by the way, is why Green Flower is such a great resource. We have all this knowledge and training to help people in those areas. Merge those two things together and then go find those roles in the space, because that specialized talent is in such huge demand right now, and there is a sheer lack of people to be able to fulfill them.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds great. So before we let Max go, Javier, let me ask you this. Do you see remote working possible in this industry?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, there's positions and positions. You cannot grow cannabis or extract it remotely. But I think that I mean, maybe soon, you know, AI and stuff.
Yeah, virtual reality, right.
But you know, I mean, this is a shift that I think the entire world is seeing. Companies are coming to realize that what they thought would just ensue chaos and lack of accountability among their workforce is actually making their businesses more viable, more nimble. Their cost structures are going down, and I think a lot of people will remain as work from home employees when this is done, or we'll see a massive increase, at least in home office options, right? Where you go to the office, say 2 or 3 days a week, but then, not go the other days. So yeah, but a lot of cannabis businesses are hiring for remote positions. So make sure to check us out, and you'll probably find your place here.
Okay, so before we wrap this up, Krista, let me ask you the last question for today's panel discussion. What advices do you have for the entrepreneurs who are aspiring to be the part of this industry?
Krista?
Yeah, gosh. Okay. I would just say, the world needs more people doing what they do best. I think, to echo everything that Javier said about, just figuring out what you do best, figure that out. It's such I remember when I heard venture capitalists say that to me, chase your passion and the money will come. I was like, yeah, I got light bills and rent, right? But it's so true. And if you can figure out what that is that you do better than anyone else, and then you apply that to the cannabis industry, you'll find not only is there exponential earning potential, but there's just exponential rewards, both external and internal rewards. And you'll find an amazing community that will really embrace people who are truly exceptional at what they do.
All right, guys. So this brings us to the end of this wonderful discussion with our panelists, Javier, Krista, and Max. This was indeed a value-packed discussion where we touched upon a lot of topics. Since time doesn't allow, we could have touched few more, but I'm sure there's always next time. So once again, I would like to thank our panelists for today to take out the time and being part of the discussion, and really adding their valuable insights, which I'm sure a lot of people would get help from. So guys, please go ahead and say goodbye to the audience, starting with the Max.
Thanks so much, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it.
Krista, please go ahead.
Thanks, everybody.
Javier.
Thank you for joining, and remember to tune in again on YouTube for this panel.
Yeah, that's what I was going to add, bro. Thank you for doing it for me, Javier.
Oh, no, you go.
You are the pro. You are the pro.
Right,
I'm sorry.
everybody.
So guys, thank you so much for being here today, and to all the people who are going to watch this on our YouTube channel. To stay updated with events like these, you can follow us on our LinkedIn page. You can also give suggestions on the topics that you would like us to cover and the speakers, your favorite speakers you want us to host. I'm dropping the link of our LinkedIn page in the chat section here. Also, to watch this session and other wonderful events, subscribe to our channel, YouTube, Designhill, which I'm also going to drop a link here in the chat section. For the all business owners who are listening to this and wish to source high quality designs and build their brands today, visit www.designhill.com. On that note, I would like to say bye-bye to everyone who joined us today. Thank you so much, guys. Stay safe and take care of yourself. Bye.
Bye.